Hey, DocTesta here, Chief Wellness Advisor for Pine Pollen Superfoods and Train for Longevity. Today I want to talk about different types of fasting because there's a lot of information out there on fasting, what's good, what's right. I think there's a lot of mixed up nomenclature, meaning naming types of fasting, and I want to kind of clear the air on what's what. So let's start with number one, where I start most people when I work with them, time restricted feeding. It's a type of fast that you can do on a daily basis. It provides a lot of benefit, but what it does is it works with the body's circadian rhythm and eating just during the daylight type of hours. So I really recommend, being done eating 3 hours before bed, roughly 7 o'clock, and not eating again until breakfast, 7 o'clock, maybe 8 o'clock. I like to encourage about a 14-hour fast this way. That can be done on a daily basis. That's time-restricted feeding. Sash and Panda out of the Salk Institute has done a lot of work on this and has found a lot of health benefits related to eating during the circadian rhythm, meaning when our body is designed to eat, which is largely during the daylight hours. Should come as no surprise, hunters and gatherers, we're not doing much hunting and gathering in the dark. So this is time-restricted feeding, also known as time-restricted eating, and can be done on a daily basis. Now, let's get into intermittent fasting. There's some confusion or there's some definitions that just get mixed up out there. For me, intermittent fasting is an 18 to 48 hour fast. And some people do an 18-hour fast every day. That is not the same as time-restricted feeding. It's more of an intermittent fast. And you can go 18 to 48 hours this way with no snacking, no caloric drinks, and just water this way. This is a great way to really bring improvement into the body. We'll get into all the benefits of these fasts here in just a minute. And so intermittent fasting is 18 to 48 hours. Now, at about the 48-hour mark, is when autophagy starts. Autophagy is when the body consumes weak, dead, dying, precancerous type cells. It cleans house. It's the original detox. Detoxifying old cells that lead to aging, that cause our body to develop and build up with toxins, because when these cells aren't healthy, they release toxic metabolites. They use up a lot of energy, but they don't really produce a whole lot for us. So that's intermittent fasting. Now, let's just touch base on maybe a 5-day water fast. So intermittent fasting is water fasting. You can do 3, 4, 5 days. Really, depending on your health and medical supervision, you could fast for up to 30 days on just water. Now, I'm not recommending you do that, and before you do any of these kinds of fasts, make sure you consult with a licensed healthcare provider to make sure you're safe and you're not on any medications that would preclude you from fasting, because there are some. So water fasting is just what it sounds like, going days without food, only drinking water. And when this starts to, when you go more than 48 hours, like I said, you get into autophagy, the body starts to detoxify and clean house. You go into a fat burning mode after about 36 hours, when we use up all the glucose that's in our blood and all the glycogen that is stored in our liver and muscles. Then our body starts to look to other sources of fuel, namely fat, and go into gluconeogenesis or lipolysis, and burning this fat to create glucose and ketones. Ketones can be used for brain function, and then we go into ketosis. So that water fasting is very beneficial for this. And like I said, depending on the health of your body, you could go up to 30 days. Personally, I've only gone 5, and I felt really good doing 5 days, but I wouldn't necessarily want to go longer. Now, some people ask me about juice fasting. Juice fasting is fasting without food, but you're still consuming calories and particularly a lot of glucose. Now there's these nutrient sensing pathways that get activated when we fast and when we eat. They get downregulated when we fast, they get upregulated when we eat. And one of the things that triggers and upregulates these nutrient sensing pathways is glucose. So juice fasting never really downregulates that pathway, and so the body doesn't really think that it's fasting. You may be fasting from animal protein and grains and vegetables and things like that, just doing juices, but it's not a true fast. You may get some benefit with weight loss, you may get some benefit of detox and cleansing, but your body's not going to go into autophagy, you're not going to go into gluconeogenesis, you're not going to get into ketosis this way. Additionally, there is dry fasting, which I have no experience in and I'm not a fan of. Here's what dry fasting is. It's fasting without the food, but also with water. Now you can go 30 days without food, you can go about 3 days without water before you die. So I don't mess with this, and I don't recommend that you mess with this either, because I just don't see an upside for it. It's not low-hanging fruit. It's not necessarily where most people, or hardly any people, really need to start. So I'm not a fan of dry fasting. I'm not recommending dry fasting. If we're not even going to go into that. And so I just want to be clear about that. Lastly, there is the fasting mimicking diet. It's another type of fasting where you can actually eat calorie restricted, whole food, plant-based meals that have certain macros in them that fly under the nutrient sensing pathways, meaning they don't turn on the pathways that tell our body to grow and to and prevent it from burning fat and getting into autophagy. Fasting mimicking diets can go for about 5 days, where you're actually eating a whole food, plant-based, calorie restricted meal plan that your body thinks it's fasting, and you still go through gluconeogenesis and lipolysis and ketosis, and then after about 3 days of all that, whether it's water only or time restricted feeding, the body starts to release and produce stem cells that regenerate the body. They regenerate the body in a way that repairs and rebuilds those cells that have been consumed in autophagy. It's pretty cool. So when the body consumes all those weak, dead, dying, useless cells, the body's smart enough to rebuild all that, and hemopoietic and mesenchymal stem cells get released in the body for several days after a fast, and begin at about day 4 of a water or fasting mimicking diet fast. So pretty cool. Now all these fasts have several things in common, right? You're going to downregulate glucose and insulin. You're going to bring balance and homeostasis back to those, which in and of itself is a huge benefit with 100 million Americans pre-diabetic. So if we can downregulate those chemicals in the body, it's going to be beneficial for you, because if you're pre-diabetic, you're on your way to diabetes, you're on your way to all kinds of health-related problems, kidney-related problems, blindness, amputation, abdominal fat, belly fat, cardiovascular disease, and heart attacks. That is the direction diabetes goes, and if you're pre-diabetic, that is likely the path you're going to go on. Now, when you start fasting longer, 18, 48 hours, 5 days, the body goes into this autophagy, starts to cleanse itself, clean out those weak, dead, dying cells, and then gets into ketosis, where it's burning fat as fuel. And usually, and in the studies we've looked at, usually the fat source is abdominal fat, that belly fat. That is the worst kind of fat to have, both as a male and a female, as it is the leading indicator for metabolic syndrome. What's metabolic syndrome? Again, it's a marker of cardiovascular disease and prediabetes. And so if you have a belly, that's, again, the direction that you're likely to head in. So another benefit of a longer fast. Also the autophagy and the stem cell release. Now, we also know with these longer fasts that inflammation is downregulated. Lean body mass is really preserved during these. The other things too that we see is improvement of triglycerides and in cholesterol and inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein. So we see a lot of benefit with these longer fasts. We also see similar benefits in daily time-restricted feeding and shorter 18 to 48-hour fasts. So a lot of benefit to this. The human body was designed to go without food for periods of time. Not without water, which is why I'm not a fan of dry fasting. But it is designed to go periods of time without food. And we were just designed that way. We just have way too much food around us now that it is just too easy to eat, which is why people are overweight and obese and diabetic. And in men, fat produces estrogen. So if you're not at the level of strength, concentration, confidence, libido, power, that could be the case. If your body's got fat, it is producing estrogen and could be detrimental to the male livelihood where testosterone is needed. So anyway, I hope these ideas and different topics around fasting. Again, we've got time-restricted feeding. You can do this daily. You could go 12 to 18 hours a day with this. You've got intermittent fasting, which is 18 to 48 hours, water only. And now during all these fasts, there's no snacking. There is no snacking. There's no caloric drinking of any kind of fluids. It's just water. Then we've got the 5-day water-only fast, if you want to go down that pathway. You've got the fasting mimicking diet, which is 5 days of eating a certain macro ratio of a whole food plant-based diet that shows similar benefits as water fasting. Juice fasting, as I said, is not really fasting because you're still getting calories in. You're not going to get the stem cell release, the autophagy. You're not going to get into fat burning mode either. So something to consider with how you choose these fastings. The last thing I want to say is before you try any of this stuff, make sure you consult with a licensed healthcare provider to make sure you are healthy enough to do this and to make sure that you are not taking any medications that would be contraindicated to fasting. But let's keep in mind, this should not be hard. And it is something the human body was designed to do. So I hope this helps clarify some things, different types of fasting, and I will see you in the next video.